Hello, and welcome to Foundations of Affordable Housing. This is part one of a six-part series. Today we'll be talking about the housing shortage and who is harmed. The market is not providing homes our neighbors can afford, and that's where affordable housing for people with lower incomes becomes so critical. Here, we're looking at who can afford the average rent in Santa Clara County based on the average wage for key jobs. It's clear that the essential workers our economy relies on can't afford to live here. You can see that a renter earning minimum wage would need to work almost 4 full-time jobs to afford average rent in the county. As they're pushed out by the high cost of housing, we face worker shortages in childcare, our grocery stores, favorite restaurants and small businesses, and even our doctor's offices. We're even seeing enrollment decline in our schools and school closures as families with young children are pushed out of the area. Because of policies limiting housing production, we've failed to build enough housing over time, as the number of jobs has consistently increased. From 2011 to 2018, a period of rapid growth in Silicon Valley, we added on average 1 unit of housing for every 8 new jobs. This supply and demand imbalance has pushed rents up 75% over that time period, and the median home price up nearly 300%. We don't have enough housing for the jobs, creating a competition for scarce housing, and the people who have the hardest time competing in this environment are the people with lower incomes. At SV at Home, we believe all housing is important, and we need more of all types of housing for the people of all income levels who live here and sustain our vibrant communities and growing economy. The part of the spectrum where SV at Home's work is most focused is in affordable housing. This can range from permanent supportive housing, an innovative type of permanent affordable housing with wraparound services to support the complex needs of most vulnerable survivors of chronic homelessness, to rental apartments available only to people with lower incomes, to affordable community ownership models like land trusts and co-ops. I want to be very clear, this is our focus not because we don't believe that all the other types of housing are also important, but because we work alongside dedicated partners who are focused on the other parts of this spectrum. So what are we talking about when we say low income or extremely low income? Income level categories are determined by both the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, and the California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, and adjusted to account for the median income in different areas of the country. Santa Clara County has one of the highest area median incomes in the country and the state at $195,200 for a family of 4 in 2025. You can see in this chart about how many of Santa Clara County's residents fall into each income category. There are a lot of people in that left column, residents with incomes lower than the median in Silicon Valley, who are more likely to struggle with the high cost of housing because we don't have enough affordable homes. We have only about 24,000 homes available for more than 207,000 residents with extremely low incomes, and we have only about 21,000 homes affordable for more than 265,000 residents with extremely low incomes. For those who don't have access to homes they can afford, they may live in overcrowded or unsafe conditions and are often facing the threat of housing insecurity, eviction, or even homelessness. Our housing affordability crisis impacts thousands of families in Santa Clara County. You can see toward the left of this chart that renters with extremely low incomes are the most cost burdened, with 71% paying more than half their income every month for rent. Cost burden makes it harder for low-income families to keep up with rent and utility costs, and a growing number of people are living one misstep or emergency away from eviction. In fact, a recent study from Princeton and the U.S. Census Bureau finds that people who are severely cost burdened are at a significantly higher risk of death over the next 20 years, compared to their counterparts who are not cost burdened. But even a lot of folks with relatively higher incomes are having trouble. What this chart shows is that although there is a lot of need for help across low and moderate income families, different people will have different needs, and we need a range of tools to address that range of needs. Affordable housing is critical to meeting the needs of our severely cost-burdened households. They're more likely than other renters to sacrifice necessities like healthy food and health care to pay the rent, and to experience unstable housing situations like evictions and homelessness. So, who are the people in extremely low income renter households? In California, almost 40% are working in the labor force. Another 35% are senior adults, and 13% have physical or developmental disabilities. That makes a total of 85% of our extremely low income renter households who are people on fixed incomes or in low wage jobs. In Santa Clara County, we have more than 50,000 families with very low or extremely low incomes who rent and don't have access to an affordable home because we don't have enough affordable homes to go around. The lack of housing affordability hurts people. When people are paying more than 30%, 50%, or even more for their housing, they have to make impossible trade-offs between rent and other necessities like food, medicine, transportation to work, or shoes and clothing. Overcrowding. Multiple families are often living together to share rent. Living in an overcrowded conditions can affect mental health, stress levels, relationships, and sleep. And as we saw during COVID, it can make it hard to avoid spreading illness between people sharing a home. Housing instability has been shown to negatively impact children's health, development, and school performance. Generationally, this has massive impacts on educational achievement, income and wealth potential, and economic output. If you have a kid who's stable and showing up to school, that makes everyone in the classroom learn better. People with a stable job are paying taxes, and employers don't have to go through the expense of training new people to come on board. There's also really good evidence around public safety that shows that stable communities are safer communities. Displacement. People who have to leave a community because of a lack of housing they can afford lose family, friends, social and cultural networks, faith communities, the neighbor who watches their kids so they can go to work or who helps when they're sick or injured. And eviction. Almost 40% of all people facing the threat of eviction are children. Women, especially victims of domestic violence, face a disproportionate share of evictions. If you're paying more than half your monthly income on rent payments, you're just one small, unexpected expense away from losing your housing. Evictions spark a cycle of instability for families, and households with children are at high risk of eviction. This has a ripple effect in their communities and harms a community's social and economic well-being. Homelessness is also a housing problem. We know that some cities have much higher rates of homelessness than others. Why is that? Recent research from Greg Colburn at the University of Washington, using statistics from cities and counties across the country, analyzes each of these factors that we often hear blamed for homelessness, like drug use, mental illness, poverty, or a political environment where more help is offered. The research shows that the one single variable that can explain the rate of homelessness is the cost of rent. On the chart here, you can see that cities with higher rents, on the right side of the chart, have higher rates of homelessness, indicated by the darker dot. Cities with lower rents, on the left side of the chart, have lower rates of homelessness, indicated by the lighter dot. It's clear to see that higher rents equal higher rates of homelessness. Many of those other common explanations we hear about may affect whether an individual falls into homelessness, but they don't explain why some places have a lot of homelessness and some places very little. Finally, the lack of affordability harms our environmental resilience. Our choices about how much and what kind of homes to build have real environmental and human costs. The lack of housing affordable to lower and middle income families in the South Bay is pushing people further away. They're driving until they can afford to live there, to Tracy, to Hollister, to Merced, and beyond. And many face grueling commutes back into the Bay Area to work. The lengthy commutes both inside and from beyond the Bay Area fuel tons of greenhouse gas emissions, even as workers are having to pay steep prices for fuel just to try to earn a living. Meanwhile, potential riders are too spread out to be able to use the public transit we do have, and this increases the costs to cities of maintaining roads and other infrastructure. When people can afford to live close to where they work, our cities are more sustainable.